So I think today we're going to cover a few things. We are going to go through the performance that we saw in the testing period, which is now finished, and talk about where we are now. And then we might talk about the launch, and then what sort of happens after that as well. So I think probably I can just give a quick intro about the testing period. We spoke in detail about this in last week's AMA. Well, it wasn't last week actually, but whenever it was. But as you'll have seen, if you've been looking at the UI and if you've been following along, we took a snapshot a couple of days ago and stopped the Treasury scaling test because we learned everything we were going to learn from it. It was a really successful test, and we saw that over the 22 days there was about a 2.2% gain in the vault shares, some of them a little bit higher, which annualized led to around a 35% return. So that was really, really promising, and the vaults performed pretty much exactly as we expected to. The GLP APR in that period was pretty low actually, so I think it was around 10% on average. It was a bit lower than that to start with, and then it bumped up a bit. So a big chunk of the gain that we had during that scaled period was from the P&L from traders, and I think traders lost around 10 million in that period. And I think that's something that's worth bearing in mind. Like the performance was so good in that period because of the position that the vaults are as a counterparty to GMX traders through GLP. So it's important to consider that that can go the other way as well. And actually, I think before we descaled the vaults yesterday and took the GLP out, Toki, you took a snapshot, didn't you, of the P&Ls, and from the discussion in the Discord yesterday, I think it was around like a 0.4% drop in 3 days. So if that had been when we launched or when we started that scaling test, then the APR would have been negative for a little bit. But the important thing to note is that over 30 days, even with that drop, the APR was still 26%. So historically, backtesting has shown that like hedging the open interest isn't going to be worthwhile. But I think it's also just important for everyone to be aware that that is the kind of the position that you're taking is a counterparty to GMX traders. So maybe Toki, you can give us a little update as to where we are now with things.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday I scaled down the treasury deploy. So we took the funds out with the treasury deploy. We still are running another deploy, which we kind of use as like a internal testing deploy. That just has like a few $100s of funds in it, and it's mainly used for like testing new features that we're adding to the keeper, and then testing the front end as well. So just making sure that like everything is working on the user interaction side. So when we actually go to launch it, like there's no issues with that. From the deploy side, the actual real deploy, like I'm planning on doing that just after this AMA. So we'll be deploying like the final version that we'll use pretty much today. And like what we're going to do is we're going to start by scaling that up with some treasury funds. So we'll start up deploying just maybe like 10,000, 20,000 in there just to get it running. And then we're going to monitor that post like opening it up to the public. Essentially just like monitoring that, making sure that everything's working as intended, and everything's like working the same as it was during the treasury scaling. And so that's kind of where we are in terms of like the deployment of the vaults, which is pretty exciting.
Awesome. So you said you're going to monitor it post opening up to the public. I guess you meant before we open it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just monitoring it before we open it up for everyone.
Awesome. So final deploy today, hopefully, and I guess we'll see the ESGMX from the multi-sig, because we had a proposal last week, I think, to seed the treasury with the to seed the vaults with the ESGMX from the non deployment multi-sig?
Yeah, exactly. So the first steps with the real deploy is to move that ESGMX and the bonus points from the treasury into there. So yeah, we need to do that first, just because basically when you're transferring an account across, you need to have a fresh account that you're transferring it to. So that's the first thing we'll do. Then deploy some treasury funds into it, and then that will just serve as a test, and it will also give a bit of historical performance. So when people go to deposit for real, there'll already be an APR displayed there, and it won't just be some random APR. It'll be a week's worth of performance, albeit a very good week, considering that GLP is paying 50% this week. So it'd be pretty comfy to see that nice APR. But after that, I guess we'll be opening up to opening up to the community and just allowing everyone to deposit. After that.
So I think, did you just drop some alpha there? Was that a week of close?
Yeah, I guess it will be a week. So yeah. Okay. Basically, yeah, we're planning to launch it and open it up for everyone at the end of next week.
Awesome. That is very exciting. So until that time, we'll be able to follow along, see how everything's going. Is there anything else that needs to be done, or is it just a case of kind of checking to see that everything's functioning?
Yeah, so there is a few things that we want to add just on the keeper side. Those are mainly redundancy checks, and adding some stuff to the simulations. So just making sure that before we go to rebalance, we want to make sure that the rebalance is valid and that it won't fail. If it does fail, we want to be able to recover from that at that point. So yeah, those are two really important steps. So just basically making sure that the redundancies that we have in place now will suffice for those cases. And the good thing is that during the treasury testing period, as well as the staging testing, we have been able to identify some parts where we were lacking in terms of redundancy. One morning I woke up and the keeper tried to rebalance a couple times and failed. So woke up to that, but we were able to. The thing is, we were running that on the treasury deploy. I'm not sure if anyone else in the community had seen that, but in the treasury deploy, it had failed to rebalance a few times. And but on the staging deploy, we're running the simulations, so we weren't running that on the treasury deploy. But on the staging deploy, we weren't having the same issue, and that's just because we'd added the simulations. But with the final deploy now, we'll be adding pretty much everything that we've tested. The main reason we didn't want to add stuff to the treasury deploy while it was running is because basically everyone was watching the APR, and if we added something and then when we added it there was a bug, it wouldn't look great. So that's why we have the testing deploy, so that we're able to test things before we add them to the final deploy. But yeah, for some final things that we're working on is mainly just making sure that those redundancies are in place, and so that everyone's able to earn that safe yield.
That's awesome. And I noticed in the announcement that it was referred to as a beta launch. What does that actually mean? Yeah,
so basically, I really want to just make sure that everyone's aware that this is a beta launch, and that means that during this time we're not going to be scaling up to over $10 million or something. It's just this is the point where we're comfortable taking on community deposits. So it's the point that I'm comfortable that I would deposit myself, but it's not at the point where I would say that we're going to go and take over all of DeFi in one foul swoop. So I would just like to say that during this beta launch, the main things that we're going to be doing is we're able to take on a lot more capital than we were with the treasury deploy. So that's millions, not just hundreds of thousands. And the main important thing that we're going to be monitoring during this period is liquidity on hedges. So we need to add some extra like hedging sources. So those extra hedging sources are going to be adding Arvo and adding. We're in talks with a few others that will be adding. And that's just because what we've seen in the past week is GMX trading has picked up quite a lot. So that means that we're just hedging on GMX right now. And if we don't have liquidity to hedge, we can't scale up very quickly, or the APR will suffer. So we won't be able to have like like the maximum APR that we can get. But yeah, so when we first start, like we'll be starting with $1 million across all the vaults. So that's 500,000 in the USDC vault, and then less than that in the others. Adding up to $1 million across all. That will be what we launch with on launch day. And the important thing is that the USDC vault will be whitelisted, and it'll be whitelisted for community members. Basically, anyone who's holding Umami will qualify to be whitelisted, and the deposit, there'll be like a deposit limit per person of 50K. So basically, like we will be able to take on 10 people if they all rush in and deposit 50K, but I'm not sure if that will happen just for the USDC vault. But the other vaults, it will be you can deposit as much as you want, and it's open up to all depositors, not just people who are holding Umami. So that would be the first day, but we will be basically what the beta launch means is we will be scaling cautiously rather than just like doubling the cap every day. So we'll be monitoring and then scaling after we see it performing right.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name. I'm pronouncing it. Ready? Phyllectoras. Phyllectoras has asked, how long will the beta period be?
So the thing is that a lot of the team is going to be away during the July month because we're going to meet up at ECC. So between now and then, we want to get the vaults to a point where they're able to basically sit without any intervention, and we don't have to be completely online, just because we are taking a little bit of a break over that period. But so I would say that the beta period could last all for July, or it could the beta. Also, I just want to clarify that the beta period does not mean that we will stay at $1 million for the whole beta period. It just means that we're not going to be scaling aggressively for that period, and it could last, I guess, for a month.
Okay, so we will be scaling, but it won't be super aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. It does depend on GMX limits mainly.
Okay, cool. Coppertease is asking, which island are we meeting up on?
So I would say that Puffin Island, I'll see you there. I did want to ask, just backtrack a little bit and ask about the testing period, because I think it's fair to say that some people have been waiting for these vaults for quite a long time, and I know from seeing things internally that there's been a lot of testing going on. So in terms of like all of the testing that we've done so far, have all of the different tests been fruitful? Is there anything like looking back that you could have just skipped over? How do is there anything you've learned for the next one? Through this testing period, it's been really helpful for just running it for an extended period of time. We haven't really got a chance to do that just in like unit tests. Like usually it's just like the unit tests run on one instance and we can't run them over many days. So that's given us an opportunity to identify like some gas estimation issues. So sometimes like the RPC will give us back a different gas estimate than what the transaction will actually pass with, and we'll end up with a failed transaction. So the gas estimation has been like one main thing that we've been able to identify, but also by increasing, basically setting a manual so it will never fail for those that were, and it's because we have like a lot of logic on chain, a lot of checks that we do when we rebalance. Sure that that could be valid. yeah, so by standard tests, we're able to identify, which has been really helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, I think from what I've seen, every time you've done some tests, it's been worthwhile. So it's nice, obviously, that we've had like a period of nothing changing. But yeah, it's been. I think if we'd have launched in could we have launched in December? I think that was the first date that we ever had.
Yeah, that was a pipe dream. That was never happening. I don't think when Al said that was going to be a launch, but he had consulted one. So
Fair enough. I think people are asking for more details about like the intention to scale, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we'll kind of take it as it comes, and it's probably better not to commit to a rigid scaling timeline. But I think what we will do is make sure that we announce every time there's a cap raise, both on Twitter and in the Discord as well.
yeah, absolutely. Make sure that really just like this beta period, we want to that everyone who's in the community active is able to get in some funds. That's the most important thing for sure.
And I guess after launch, we are going to be focusing on a few integrations as well. I don't know whether we can specify anything in particular, but are there any integrations that you are really excited to get up and running?
Yeah, so there's two that come to mind. One's Dolomite for sure. That's been talked about a lot on Twitter and a bit in the Discord. That'd be great to get up and running. I think they'll just be supporting like assets for start. So if you want to borrow, you can only borrow ETH against GLP ETH that we're providing. So it'll just be like for like assets, and that's just because we've identified that it's in a beta phase right now, and that's the safest for any lending market integrating with us. Another one that I'm really excited for that's still in the works. I'm not sure if it will be on launch day. Probably, most likely won't, but it will be very shortly. It's Railgun, so that'd be really exciting if for any of you people that are really excited about privacy stuff.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I think we might find that that's a nice way for people to find out about Umami as well, because they've obviously got probably a different user base than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'd be great. Hopefully, bring some liquidity to Railgun on Arbitrum as well. They're doing really well on mainnet, but yeah, be good to get the numbers up on Arbitrum as well.
I think I know it's like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. for Clones, so I won't ask him to come up and speak, but I think Clones is also working on making sure that we're on all of the portfolio tracker sites as well, so DeFi Llama. It'd be great to have our yields up on the DeFi Llama yields dashboard, because I think that will kind of highlight how far separated these deconstructed vaults can be from what's essentially the competition in the market.
Yeah, that would be great, being able to draw comparisons between them, especially on the APR side.
Yeah. If anyone wants to hop up, by the way, and ask any questions, I'm just going to scan through and see if there's anything that we haven't covered. I'm also, while I do that, I'm interested to hear how quickly everyone thinks the initial cap's going to be filled, because there's kind of two lines of thought here. There's one that everyone's kind of chomping at the bit to get to the yield, and there's the other that people are like probably going to be a little bit cautious, sit back, make sure the final deploy works well, and then once it's proven itself for a couple of weeks, then we might start to see the influx. So I'm really interested to hear what other people think about that too.
Yeah, I'm just seeing some commentaries asked about the audit. So yeah, the audit is complete, and we have got the response back from Tokyo, and we'll announce that. We'll make it public very shortly. But yeah, it's all come back and it's finished.
And obviously, with the launch, the final deploy being today, you can kind of imply how that went as well. So it was definitely a good audit. Are there going to be any other lending protocols that integrate the Umami vaults?
Yeah, it's so there will be others. Another one is Abra as well. That we're looking at integrating with to be able to mint MIM with mint MIM with the vault assets.
I think it's worth saying as well that the vaults are following a standard, so they're following the ERC 4626 standard, which means that people can integrate these without our permission. In fact, again, it's worth pointing out that the vaults themselves are permissionless and automated, and there isn't any like manual input here. So these things can just happen, and hopefully will happen, and hopefully people will build on top of the vaults as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how all of that plays out, I think. Strad's asking, will we be able to follow the vault on Umami Finance from today? I think probably not, just because we need to make sure it's all hooked up right. And also it won't be the level of granularity that we had for the vault scaling test with, I think it was 2 hourly data points on the graph, isn't really that sustainable without paying lots for infrastructure. And also it's not really, it kind of becomes insignificant after over a longer period of time. So the UI, the graphs on the front end will be much lower granularity to keep everything running smoothly and efficiently. So for the first couple of days, it's going to be like 1 point on a graph, which doesn't even draw a line, right? So we'll have a couple of days. I think early next week, we will actually have the UI live. You obviously won't be able to deposit because you'll be, you need to be whitelisted for that. And we won't add the Merkle route to the whitelist until we're ready to go live, but you should be able to follow the progress. When official white paper release? There's a question.
Yeah, so we have a lot of charts and we have a lot of data, but we haven't put it all together. So that's still in the works.
Yeah, it'll probably be before the beta's over. It'll definitely be published, and we'll have like pretty extensive documentation out in our Git book before the beta starts, like this weekend. So that should be pretty sufficient for people to get a good idea of everything.
100 million by end of year, I would say anywhere from 50 to 100 million by end of year. That's like, yeah, 100 million if we have everything set up and working, like, why not? And that is definitely possible as well.
That would be pretty big.
Yeah, GLP has 500 million. Yeah, I've always thought about that. It'd be pretty funny if like the majority of GLP just ended up staking for Umami Vaults. Would be interesting.
You know, I think if we get the message out there, it's like, it's more appealing. It's more appealing for me anyway, because I don't have to, first of all, it's just easier to track. Like if you try and work out how much you've gained from holding GLP, it's really hard. And I think our UI with the portfolio page that's coming as well, will make it much easier to see what's going on, but also just having like number going up rather than having to look at the amount that you've claimed and the change in the GLP price. I think it's like a nicer experience for users, and just simplifying it down to only being exposed to ETH or whatever they want to be exposed to. Yeah, I can't see why we couldn't take like a big chunk of that GLP.
Yeah, exactly. I think so as well. Maybe not like 100%, but I think that with 100%, I mean, it's possible, but like with that, you know, you have to have enough liquidity on hedging platforms outside of GMX, and that would mean that you'd have to basically essentially source equal or more liquidity outside of GMX itself to be able to do that. But you know, it is possible. Just, you know, liquidity on Arbitrum has to increase a bit. But yeah, I would say 100 million is definitely achievable with the current liquidity on Arbitrum.
Yeah, and of course, things can change very quickly as well. But just a question has come up because I've seen someone asking about integrating into Beefy. I'm not 100%. I'm not that familiar with Beefy, but from what I remember when I looked at it a year ago, or whatever, it was mostly around auto compounding. Do our vaults auto compound?
Yeah, they do. Just by themselves, so you don't really need an auto compounder. It just does that. I mean, that's what it is essentially. Like the asset itself will increase in the amount of ETH that it represents. So basically, like all the yield is just automatically used in the strategy.
Awesome. Cool. I think we've covered most things. I guess I do have a bullet point here to say, like, is there anything that we want to talk about in the future? I know it's very early to be talking about what's next, but we obviously have been thinking about it. We are reaching a point where we have a product out, so it'll be interesting to hear what your thoughts on possible avenues for Umami are in the future.
Yeah. So I really like. Well, I guess it depends on what happens with GMX v2. Like we can definitely build a product on top of that, and it's relatively low effort. If that starts to attract more trading volume than GLP itself, then like the GM tokens, like we can build we can retrofit like our vaults on top of GMX v2 to work like exactly the same, which is really cool and relatively low effort. Other products that we're talking about internally, like one of them is like a Uni v4 strategies, which could be really fun. We're excited about internally, and like those are, I would say, the main two that we're looking at right now. But in between, there's a lot of like relatively low effort ones that we can do, like integrations as well. I see someone's mentioning like basically like using the Umami vaults in GMX, and that's something that I've always thought is really cool, which is basically what you would be doing is you can set up a pair on GMX v2 for USDC against USDC, and the Umami USDC against just USDC, and what you can do is you can essentially trade a P&L, so you can like leverage up and bet if traders are going to lose or if they're going to win, which would be pretty funny. It would only really be useful for like short-term bets, but it could be fun if you think that the majority of traders are wrong. So I guess that's basically what my thoughts are for the future.
Yeah, I think the work that's been done on the back end in particular, and the experience that you have with like building the simulation, the whole process basically, is definitely like transferable, and it's like a great toolkit of knowledge to be able to build new products from. So I think it's super exciting to think about some of the things that we can do, and also probably nice for you to not be looking at solely thinking about GLP and GMX.
Yeah, absolutely. The really exciting thing is that with what we've done, it's like directly applicable to building Uniswap strategies for concentrated liquidity, and we can probably do what we did with GLP strategies. Like you can pretty clearly see that like we put a lot of effort into it, and like it's reflected in the yields that we're earning compared to other strategies. And I'm pretty confident that we could do the same thing with Uni v3 strategies as well. If you take a look at the market now and imagine how you could make that better using like the same methodology that we applied to GLP, we could definitely replicate that.
Awesome. Apparently I sound like cold-blooded Schiller. Don't know who that is. Sorry.
So just talk about the fee structure. I've seen you've asked that a few times. So the fee structure, it's going to be 75 basis points deposit and withdraw. From the vaults, there'll be no fees when depositing or withdrawing from the slow release contracts. So you'll be able to earn boosted yield. The only caveat with that is you just have to wait like a longer withdrawal period. For for vault fees, we have like an assets under management fee, and that is 2%, and that's taken always. So all assets all assets under management, there'll be a 2% fee that's annualized, and there'll be a fee that's taken on the condition that the vaults are making money, and that fee will average out to roughly a 20% performance fee across the year. The implementation of that will be shared in the docs. It's a little bit more that I'd like to cover on the AMA, but yeah, you can read about how that's actually implemented in the docs.
Sounds good. And those fees will be automatically routed to Marinators, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like pretty much every rebalance will be sending 50% fees to Marinators. And yeah, that's correct. 200 bips management fee. Yeah.
It's not as Toki mentioned, it's not quite as straightforward as a flat 20% fee, because it isn't really a performance fee in like TradFi terms, because of the fact this is a fully automated strategy. So that will be covered fully in the docs, but it will equate to basically the same as what we're trying to get to. Okay, yeah, that's a good question, Strad. So why are we taking more than the GLP minting fee? And what are we going to do with that excess?
Yeah, so there's more than when someone deposits into the strategy, the vaults pay more fees than just minting GLP. So each vault pays the amount to mint GLP, and what happens at rebalance is we refund the vaults from the fees that have been paid forward to mint more GLP. So that's covered, but then there is an excess, and that excess will be vested to the vaults over a month period. So those are used to pay for funding fees and position management fees as well. But yeah, those fees don't go to Marinators. They are purely used to pay for fees in the actual vaults themselves. And yeah, just to clarify, that's just for deposit and withdrawal fees. The AUM fee and the like approximate performance fee, those both go to the Treasury and Marinators. Also, there is gas for the keeper as well. So there's a lot of gas that's involved with running this strategy, and we also use the deposit and withdrawal fees to fund the gas as well.
So there's a high gas cost even on Arbitrum.
Yes, there is a high gas cost. There's once you guys will be able to see the code once it's public. There's a few things that I really want to highlight in the docs, and that's the fact that we have checks when we open and close the rebalance, and those are mainly what cost the most. And it's basically like we include some of the math that we're running in the simulations on chain just to verify that the results are correct.
So sounds like we need an Umami layer 3, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is a gap in the market for like a private layer 3 that runs strategies like this, so who knows?
Okay, well, I think... Oh, one last question. Here we go. What's the possibility... Oh, there we go. What's the possibility that the Umami token reaches 1,000 on the bull run? There you go.
I would say that there is a possibility that it reaches some price, but Stephen first has to place a magnet on the chart, and it will then be attracted to the magnet.
Okay, well, thanks so much for your time, Toki and Grumpy. It's been super fun, and it's really exciting. So launch date, again to recap, will be, well, it's not actually a date, is it? But I think you said like a week from now. So probably next Friday, unless devs die overnight.
Yeah, so I would say next week, end of next week, will be the time that we'll be opening it.